Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing great. I'm loving my life. Hassan, good morning. Hope you're doing great. T-Dog Yo-Yo, good morning, Bitcoiners. Bud, good morning, Bitcoiners. It is coffee and sunrise time, indeed. Indeed. Good morning. In our darkest hour, Bitcoin shines bright. Indeed, Ben. Christine, good morning. Hope you're doing great, Christine. John, good morning. Thomas, indeed, good morning. Hope you're doing great, guys. Aqualodge, we got a lot of hellos today. Good morning from Deep Freeze, Chicago. Indeed, it is cold there today. I saw the temperatures. It's cold. Bitcoin Graffiti, how's it going, my man? Joseph, hope everything's going well. Steven, good morning, sunshine. Indeed, we got maximum sunrise this morning. Sunrise Tech operational. The money is also running on time. Things are going great with the money, right? It's running fine. All that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. Now, because it's been 2 days since we all got together, we've got quite a bit of extra Moscow time today. This is a Moscow time bonanza today. We got a ton of Moscow time. So let's go. Let's get into the Moscow time. This one is a user-activated Moscow time. So I had this shared with me this morning. It's from The Economist. All right, everyone. So in case you're worried, right, we don't want to think too much, right? The Economist is helping us understand that thinking too much is very dangerous. It's not good for your health. The Economist writes, thinking too hard makes your head hurt. Okay, guys? So if you think too hard, it's going to hurt your head. So careful. But good news, a study shows that it causes chemical changes in the brain, which present behaviorally as fatigue. So if you think too much, you're going to feel tired, guys. You know, they'll present themselves behaviorally. One place where you don't have to worry about people thinking too much is Canada. You know, there's probably a lot less thinking too much in Canada. A lot of people taking the Economist advice here in Canada, right? They're not stressing themselves out too much. So this is actually this is the Above the Fold on an Ottawa-based newspaper. So this is kind of like a newspaper for the capital. It's called The Hill. The exact same newspaper exists in the United States called The Hill, right? It's just a newspaper for people who work in politics, right? So these are their actual three above the headline, above the fold, because you know how the newspapers fold, right? These are the above the fold headlines. There's three of them, right? Read them all together, read them individually. This is what you get in Canada, where they're definitely not getting headaches from thinking too much. First, Conservative leader Oliver doesn't deserve the 17% lead in his polls. Second, Trudeau still the best option for Liberals. And three, Trump 2.0 would be a high risk for Canada. Canada. You know, what are you going to do, Canada? This is also where people are not thinking too much. Again, another in Canada. So if you remember the last time Canada had an election, they ran a fake news story about just a tiny little fake news story, just a little throwaway fake news story about genocide and mass graves all over the country, apparently. So there was genocide and mass graves over the country. But then after the election, they found out that it wasn't true. There were no genocides or mass graves around the country. They even did on the campaign trail a national day of mourning and reconciliation for the mass graves that don't exist. And the Mail now saying it's true. Nearly 100 churches across Canada have been torched or damaged after activists lied that 200 Indigenous children were buried under Catholic schools. Canada, not thinking too hard. And we get this one from Canada too. So it's really cold. We heard Chicago, it's cold. But if you go a little further north than Chicago, you'll get to Manitoba. And next to Manitoba is Saskatchewan, right? So it's even colder. It's even colder there. And they're sure about this, okay? This comes right from there, all right? This is from Canada, where they're definitely not getting headaches from thinking too much. Electric cars, the best vehicle in frigid temperatures, Saskatchewan advocates say. So it's not just that electric cars are good, guys. They're the best in the cold. They're the best, okay? If you didn't believe me, ask a Canadian. They'll tell you they're the best. They're the best. There's no better cars. Now, I'm not sure if this is in Canada already, but this is about America, this next story. It's the FAA, right? It's the Federal Aviation Authority. Okay. So this would go better in Canada because they're not thinking too hard, but this is for America. So America trying to catch up with Canada, right? You know, a lot of people think Canada north of America, ahead of America. A lot of people believe that. A lot of people think America is like the upgraded, or Canada is the upgraded America. A lot of people think that. In this case, it might be true. It might be true because the FAA, the United States Federal Aviation Authority, looking to be more Canadian. Here's the headline. FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. So the airplane folks, right? They're not happy. You know, they only had the one door blown out, and people were like, "Is this because of DEI?" They're just gonna go right for it, right? They don't. It's not. They don't want that. They want the equity and inclusion of severely mentally disabled and psychiatric patients. If they come to Canada, they're going to be able to run all the airplanes they want. They got a lot of those people there, right? But just so that you know, right? So in case you're worried about the FAA, and then, you know, Elon Musk is really really concerned about the severe mental illness people they're trying to get, because they gave him shit. Remember that he didn't hire those refugees coming in Texas to be his rocket scientists, because there's like litigation on that right now. The courts are after him, right? So in the United States, now that the FAA wants the severely intellectually disabled and psychiatric patients to be running the airplanes, they have this headline for us from the New York Post, right? So listen carefully, right? This is why you shouldn't worry. Why airplane crashes are now safer than ever. All right, so don't worry, guys. If the severely intellectually disabled people are going to be running the Federal Aviation Authority, don't worry. Don't worry, everyone, because airplane crashes, the crashes are safer than ever now. We're fine. Crashes are just crashes. Just a bit of an airplane crash. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Don't worry. I got this one too from, you know, people, Bitcoiners, right? We love our open source technology, right? All that stuff is great, right? We love open source, but the IEEE spectrum here is telling us that open source AI is uniquely dangerous. All right. But regulations that could rein it in would benefit all of AI, guys. So there you got it. All right. Open source, danger. But the regulators are here. They're going to save you. They're going to make sure your AI is super down with the DEI, right? Because that's a big, that if you read the article, you'll find out that the AI might get prejudiced without the rules, right? It might get prejudiced. So you don't want that. You do not want prejudiced AI. And so going back to the story on Elon Musk, so it turns out that it's not that simple, right? You know, he's a little concerned about the severely mentally disabled people joining the Federal Aviation Authority. But the Wall Street Journal here has come out and said, you know, the thing about Elon Musk, it's forget about it. You know, he's not hiring the refugees at the border, the glass house thing, right? You know, he's got all these considerations, right? But now the Wall Street Journal is letting us know that as he gains more influence, right? As Elon gains more influence, I've been on Rumble doing the same. Okay. As it gains more influence, right? As Elon Musk gains more influence, right? What they're saying here is, as Elon Musk is gaining even more influence, he's becoming more like Trump. All right. You didn't know, guys. Elon is becoming more like Trump now. According to the mainstream media, he's just becoming more like Trump, right? Now, is that trying to paint him as a bad person? Of course not. We know the media loves Trump, right? Of course they love him. Of course they love him, right? He's their favorite. Meanwhile, according to NBC, a network of public interest groups and lawmakers nervous about former President Trump's potential return to power is quietly devising plans. This is from NBC News. They're just quietly, guys, they're quietly devising plans to foil any effort on his part to pressure the US military to carry out his political agenda. So what they're saying here, guys, is that even if he wins democratically, they're quietly, it's just quietly, right? They're going to remove civilian control of the military because it's like the AI thing, like if it's open sourced, it's not going to work, right? So if like the presidency is like not controlled by the military controlling the military, not the civilian oversight, then we're going to have problems. We're going to have problems, right? And that's exactly why, right? That's exactly why you're hearing these calls too, because if you don't want the civilian control of the US military, right? Why would you also want civilian control of healthcare? Why would you want that, right? And they're coming right out and asking this question, right? This is a headline from the New York Post. I think the Post. I forgot to get the above the fold. Why the US needs a Pentagon for disease, right? So they want to now an unelected like a military apparatus, but it's going to be for healthcare, guys. It's going to be for your own benefit for sure. It's going to be for you, right? It's for your safety. It's going to be for your safety, right? It's going to be great. It's going to be great. We need that, right? Now, if all of that was making you a little nervous, right? All of that was making you a little bit nervous, right? I don't know. What about civilian control of the military? I kind of like that. And, all of these things. Don't worry. Don't worry. Okay. Because it turns out that, the Christian people might be worried about some of this stuff. But it turns out the Pope this morning let us know that Marxists, so don't be afraid of the Marxists, right? Because Marxists and Christians have a common mission. Didn't you know? All the Christians, they're in league with the Marxists. They have the same problem. They have the same problem. So he says, right? Pope Francis wants the courage to step outside the box and opening a dialogue for new paths. Christians, as well as socialists, Marxists, and communists, have a common mission. All right, everyone has a common mission. It's just everything the socialists want, the Christians want it too, according to the Pope. The Pope. The Pope. The Pope. The news gets funnier and funnier, guys. It just gets funnier and funnier. So let's go back to it for a second to the, let me see if I missed anything here. The Elon Musk article that he's becoming like Trump. And this one about the quiet devising plans, right? That the military will no longer be under civilian authority. A lot of people picking up on that this morning. You've got Mike Benz talking about this. He says, never forget this tweet for the rest of your life. This is an admitted plan in advance for the military to no longer observe the military chain of command. This is a military-run government. This is a plan to end civilian-run government. And Alex Jones said much the same thing. He said the following: this is so important. And so all of these folks now citing Mike Benz, we were on top of the Mike Benz thing, right? We've been talking about Mike Benz for almost a year now. I think it was last June, maybe, that I started talking a lot about Mike Benz. So I guess it's half a year. What am I talking about? It's January. So it's been about half a year we've been talking about Mike Benz. But it looks like he's pushing all the right buttons. I believe he will be a speaker at Bitcoin Nashville, July 25th to the 27th. But Alex Jones reiterating this, saying this is so important. If Trump can get past all the election interference, the deep state plans to trigger leftist riots. So that's kind of the call here, according to Mike Benz and a few others, that they're planning on mass destabilizing riots of such a scale that only the National Guard can contain them, and then pre-planning a way to block Trump from activating the National Guard. So that's where this apparent plan from the NPC News is coalescing around. So he says, if Alex Jones says, if Trump can get past all the election interference, the deep state plans to trigger leftist riots, then when 47, so that's president if he wins again, that's Trump if he wins again, calls out the National Guard, he will be called a dictator, and the left will support endless civil war. They are going for broke. I will be covering this tonight with live on X Spaces with Posobiec, Michael Flynn, Roger Stone, and others. Please join us and share. So that's what Alex Jones says this morning. And indeed, it does sort of look like that's the plan. It looks like the plan will be to create a George Floyd type summer 2020. If you remember what that was like, I do, right? And remember this, in the summer of 2020, if you were in New York City and you called the police, for example, right? If there was something wrong in your neighborhood, what did you get? You got, we're not coming. That's what you got, right? They just would straight up say, no, we're not coming. We're not going to be there. So um, I don't know if this is going to happen, but it's looking pretty bad. Now, when we think of this as bad news, right? What do we say in the Bitcoin world, right? When all these things are looking bad, what do we often fall back on? What do we often say reflexively? Well, this all things might be good for Bitcoin in this case, and indeed, we're dealing again with a Newtonian situation here, Newtonian third law, equal and opposite reactions. So as we have this conversation about a military led by civilians versus the military, the chain of command, right? We were supposed to always have a military in America that was civilian led. Remember, the president is the commander in chief. It's one of the most important tools in the toolbox of the president. And it's been there since General George Washington became the president. It's one of the features of the US presidency, and one of the things that has been removed for a long time now, right? So we can read this as bad news, right? We can say, oh, there's a plan to put the civilian leadership of the military on the outside and to exclude the president from military decision making. But would that be a new thing? Is that really news? Is that really something? Now, I get it. Alex Jones is warning us. Mike Benz is warning us. But I've been listening closely to RFK and others since he began his campaign. And what did RFK tell us? RFK told us that from the moment the Bay of Pigs happened in Cuba in 1963, the moment that happened, JFK knew that there were elements beyond his control that were in the US military, that he was not in complete and total control of the US military, and he was dealing with rogue people, right? You've heard that word today, rogue money, right? People are calling Bitcoin today rogue money. Well, the US military went rogue in 1963. It looks like, anyway, they went rogue in 1963. Now, whether the entire military, I don't think so, right? I think most people are not really involved in the actual decision making about what the US military does and doesn't do. But what we've seen since then is that Trump, for example, probably didn't run the military the way most people would think. How do we know that? Well, what we understand from his presidency is that he wasn't able to shut the border down when he was president. How is it that Trump wasn't able to shut the border down while he was president? Well, it looks like he wasn't in total control. How long has it been since the US president wasn't in total control? Probably since they killed Kennedy. It looks like, anyway. There were elements beyond the control of the president since then, and they probably maintained a consistency since then. Now, there have been presidents who had more or less control over this apparatus than ever before, but that would probably depend on how corrupted that president is, how much they were willing to continue with the mirage that they were in charge, right? Now, was Reagan aware that he wasn't in total and complete control? Probably not. Was George Bush in total and complete control the first? George Bush the first? Maybe. So it's relative only to the extent that you're corrupted, right? Can Joe Biden get the military to do what he wants? Probably, because he's probably doing what they want. Remember, what I've said is the reason why Joe Biden is the president. It's because he's the most blackmailable, right? It's not that he's been being blackmailed. He's the most blackmailable. That's what makes him an ideal president for the conditions that we're in. So how long has it been since America has existed outside of civilian control over the military? I will say since JFK. I think it's been that long, right? So when we see it as bad news that there's this plot that the NPC News says is happening, remember, this is the first time we're having this conversation openly and in the mainstream news. By them saying that it's going to happen, of course, they forget that it's already happened. It's been around for a long time. Trump was not in complete and total control of the military the first time he was around. Did he not ask for the National Guard to be deployed in Washington, D.C. during January 6th? That's what I think. That's what I've been told. That's my understanding. Now, there's some degree of oversight about Nancy Pelosi and what happens on the actual campus of the Congress, right? So the actual buildings, and then the police is a little different, National Guard and this and that. But who knows, right? Trump looks like had his commands rebuked. He had commands put out while he was still the active president of the United States. Remember, on January 6th, he was the president, right? That wasn't the day they signed over the presidency to Biden. That wasn't until the 20th, right? Inauguration day and and the day that January 6th happened are not the same thing. Trump is still the president that day. Imagine he wasn't even allowed to post on Twitter while he was still president. He wasn't allowed to post on Facebook while he was still the president of the United States. And we're sitting here trying to get all upset about him and losing authority over the National Guard in a year if he wins again. It already happened, guys. It already happened. And the good news about it already happening is we're learning the tricks. And the tricks couldn't be more obvious when you look at what's happening in Texas right now. Remember, Trump wasn't able to shut the border down while he was president. While he was president, he wasn't able to post in his last days on social media, right? So think about the things that were already beyond his power as a sitting president and think about what we have today. So he's sitting there now and we're hearing about all this stuff in Texas, right? We're hearing about Texas. What's going on in Texas? Well, it turns out that the Texas government has they've evicted US border control. They've evicted the federal authorities from the border. And it turns out in reaction to that the Biden administration is actually threatening action against Texas. So I think we're already, if you're in a position where a state is evicting a federal entity, you're already in a civil war type situation. I mean, you're not acknowledging federal authority, right? So we've already got to a position where Texas may be the most powerful U.S. state, all things considered, right? I understand California is a little richer, a little more people, but Texas has got to be in the top 2 or 3 most powerful U.S. states, and they are more or less telling the Joe Biden administration, we don't acknowledge your authority on the border, right? So you've got Texas state troopers, Texas law enforcement that is now actually actively taking over the federal border with Mexico, evicting federal authorities and administering their own brand of, law there. And now we hear from CBS News that the Biden administration warns it will take action if Texas does not stop blocking federal agents from the U.S. border area. Well, what does that mean? Taking action. We'll find out. We'll find out. But whatever it is, it's going to be funny for people who are waiting for this system to change and waiting for these conversations to happen. And that's exactly what's going on, right? If we go back to what they said about Trump and his authority being lessened if he wins again and having these military running the military, right? There's a lot of people out there who think that General Milley is actually where the deep state coalesces, that he already was, and we've heard it before. Didn't he say that he opened back channels with China when Trump was negotiating with him? So we've already had absolute disobedience from the military towards Trump, and we've been existing and living with that for a while. So I don't see why it would be any different now, right? This has already been the case. We have already had a military takeover of the US military, and the civilian chain of command has been broken at least since Trump was president, but probably way before, except for those instances, like I just said, where the president was also a deep state actor, like in the case of the Bushes, right? So that's what we've been dealing with for a while now. And we can even say, okay, well, the US military is running its own military thing, and and maybe that's just in some weird case domestically or whatever. But is it not the case abroad now too, right? This Gonzalo Lira case, right? Everyone's been talking about Gonzalo Lira this weekend. Who's Gonzalo Lira? He was a journalist who was out there trying to explain to the whole world that the Zelensky government in Ukraine was as corrupt as you can imagine, and that the American government was in cahoots with one of the most corrupt governments on the planet. And he was arrested by Zelensky, and now he's dead. So he was arrested by Zelensky, and now he's dead. Now, if you believed that America was really in control of whatever it's doing, don't you think America, with all the money we've given Ukraine, could get one person out of prison? Don't you think that would be easy, right? Like if Joe Biden wanted to, I mean, they got Brittany Griner. Remember the basketball player who smoked some weed in Moscow? He got her out of Moscow, out of Putin's clutches, right? And now you're telling me that there's an American journalist and he was arrested by the Zelensky government and we couldn't get him out. So we probably could have, right? And we didn't. And now he's dead. So either America doesn't have the kind of authority we think they have in Ukraine, which might be the case given the blackmail situation that Biden's living under, given Burisma and what they're up to, and we'll talk about that in a second. But what we find out is that America might not even be in control of its own military in Ukraine. It might even be that bad. It might not just be Americans running corrupt organizations ending the civilian command of our military and making the military in control of the military in America, which is not okay. It might be foreign governments that are in charge of the American military. It might even be more perverted than you thought. It might not just be that we're losing control of the American military to Americans. That's one thing, right? That's bad enough. It looks like we might have lost control of it to foreign entities, right? So one way to explain what's going on in Ukraine. Now, I don't know at what level the command structure of this exists. Probably there isn't one. It's probably just that person's blackmailing that person's blackmailing that one. It's mutually assured destruction. So people have to work together to hide what's really going on. But the Gonzalo Lira case, right? You can read Kanakoa the Great, right? And what Gonzalo Lira was able to show was that the Ukrainian oligarch Ihor Kolomoisky, right, owned Burisma. So he owns Burisma. He was also the producer of the Zelensky TV show, where Zelensky played a popular comedian who becomes president and then became president, exactly as it was said in the show. And he's also the person who funds the Azov battalion. So you've got Kanakoa writing about that today, saying how one Ukrainian billionaire funded Hunter Biden, Zelensky, and the Azov battalion. Now, we've seen Azov battalion people involved with the January 6th protests, for example, right? There was actual Azov battalion people there. The guy with the bone skull face, the tattoos of the bone skull, that stuff looks like a swell guy. He was there and has pictures of him with Jacob Chansley, the Buffalo head guy. I don't think Jacob knew who he was dealing with, but you get this guy with his, smiling. Hey, we're just doing a little mischief here, right? So we're in a situation where the civilian command of the military is gone, where journalists are actively killed. Like, this was a journalist who was, I think, killed. He was killed by the US government. I mean, what other way is there to see it? How can you come to a conclusion where Gonzalo Lira wasn't killed by the US government? As I said, if we had real US control over our military, it doesn't matter if he's spreading lies or he's a journalist you disagree with. He's an American citizen, and he was arrested by Ukraine. If America had civilian control, they could have got him out. Hold on, I'm getting some calls here. Just a second. Just a second. 1 second. One second. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So, you get that situation that we have with our military and with the journalists in America, and all of this news looks like it's pretty bad for the United States going forward if this is the way it is. However, there is also good news that you can interpret through this. First of all, what's going on in Texas shows us that America is already a decentralized entity. And by decentralized, you can see that there's enough rights within a state to take action against the federal government. So the corruption isn't quite deep enough to get to a place like Texas. You see this picture yesterday too in Texas, where there was someone who came to protest Yemen or something like that, and they tried to interrupt the governor, right? And you had all these geriatrics, just erupted into like a big brawl and fight. Texas is made differently, right? It's not the same as the rest of the country. And so Texas now, realizing its sovereignty, is protecting its own borders, has evicted the federal government. This, to me, is a form of civil war already, probably as far as the Civil War in America is going to get. But it's about states' rights. It's about states assuming their rights. And it's a trend that I see continuing. Now, it's not even that states continue this. The actual means of warfare are changing. And you get this from Palmer Luckey, right? So Palmer Luckey, who I don't know if you guys know who Palmer Luckey is, but Palmer Luckey is he invented the Oculus, the eyeglass thing that Mark Zuckerberg paid way too much money for. And he took that money and jumped into Bitcoin. So Palmer Luckey, a Bitcoiner, but also more importantly, and he's one of the very special speakers I'm trying to get for Nashville, he also got into weapons. So Palmer Luckey, after Oculus, has become one of the most important weapons manufacturers in the world. And what kind of weapons he makes are ones that will actually make it so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that these people like Milley with all their buttons and all these people have taken over the US military. It doesn't matter because the scale of military activity and fighting and weapons is going to go towards civilians. It's not going to require the type of centralized military capacity that it once required. It's not tanks and nuclear bombs anymore. It's the stuff that Palmer has been making. And the stuff Palmer's been making is amazing. It's all these little drones, it's all these little rockets and stuff like that. And so he's been talking a lot about how the energy sources will be used, right? He's saying future combat robots will be similar to EVAs in certain ways. Long endurance will be niche feature. Most systems will spend the majority of their time tethered to heavy power sources, only breaking away from them during short periods of intense violence. I predict you're going to see these first around power stations. You saw this weekend that Tucker Carlson was talking about the electric grid in America and how vulnerable it actually is. Now, at the same time, you've also got rules in America where the federal government is now going to be penalizing people, right? So here's from the New York Times today. Biden administration to fine oil and gas companies for excess methane. A plan to impose a fee of $900 to $1,500 on every excess ton of methane emissions would be the first federal price on greenhouse gas pollution. But what would that do? What do you think a penalty for methane emissions would do in America? Of course, it would create Bitcoin mining operations on every single methane exhaust in the country. And you're incentivizing, in this case, the penalties from the federal government would actually incentivize a future coupling of the energy industry with Bitcoin, which indeed will create a situation where energy systems, energy grid, energy production plants like hydro dams or solar farms or wind farms or small modular nuclear reactors are going to require what Palmer is talking about here, a tethered security force. And couldn't you imagine that? A bunch of these drones coming off of a power source going after whatever threat it might perceive. And that I think anyway is going to change not just the energy piece, but the scale of warfare looks like it's changing considerably. And if the scale of warfare changes to optimize for these small weapons, they're going to be very inexpensive. You're talking about, $100 device, which could potentially compete against an entire battalion. Like, I mean, one drone in the air moving in a pattern that would be hard for a marksman to hone in on, and that was just raining hell down on people the whole time, it's going to be a little difficult, right? And you can imagine that going forward now. You can imagine already what we saw in Ukraine, and this was sort of the first generation of these drones that I don't even think they were deployed at the capacity that Palmer Luckey could deploy them at going forward. So what you get here with the Palmer Luckey case is a fella who is definitely a civilian. I don't think Palmer Luckey is going to be joining any military rank and order. And if you want to know where Palmer Luckey, besides being a Bitcoiner, where his mind is at, right? Here's something he shared on the weekend. You're gonna love this, guys. You're gonna absolutely, as Bitcoiners, you're gonna love what Palmer Luckey had to say this weekend. So here he is. He goes and says, "I'm gonna be sharing my ultimate general purpose shit post later today. This is weapons-grade stuff that can be applied to a wide variety of missions. Please do not misuse it. I have maintained exclusive use of it for all these years, but now it can be yours. And it's a post that he uses about canola oil, about seed oils. All right, so here's what he says. Over many years of attending anime expos, so he's making fun of people here, obviously, right? I have developed important cost-saving measures. I see a lot of posts here asking for tips on how to save money, so I decided to share some of my best. Don't waste your money on things that don't matter. Tip number 1, canola oil. Everyone already knows to not eat the expensive food at LA Live restaurants, but you can save a ton of money by drinking yummy canola oil shakes. You can buy 8,000 calories of oil for less than $2 if you buy store brand 20-ounce bottles from Dollar Tree near Little Tokyo. Free bus ride from AX. White flour is 35 cents a pound, but you only need enough to mix to make a good consistency. Most of your calories will be coming from the oil. That means you can spend less than 40 cents a day on all your food. Don't waste money on name brand oil, though. They all come from the same refineries. And if you want to splurge, you can add fun toppings like Splenda packets, Hershey's syrup, or Metamucil fiber supplement. I like to pack an assortment of concentrated canola mix-in blends in travel-sized bottles. Canola oil is often used as hair conditioner, so TSA shouldn't give you a hard time if you're flying. Me and my friends usually like to go together in a shared oil jug. Gallon jugs can easily save you another 10 cents a day. Pick it up on day 0 and have each person in your group bring a mix-in from home if you want to skip the crowds. So Palmer's on our team, guys, okay? He's a Bitcoiner who is making fun of people with the canola oil and who is definitely going to guarantee civilian control of the military. Because I don't think he's going to be selling this shit. I mean, he's definitely making weapons contracts to this day. Like, there's no doubt about that, right? But as we move forward here, as we see what's happening in Texas, as we see what's happening with the US dollar, as we see what's happening with the Biden administration, you can imagine people like Palmer Luckey, like Elon Musk, who, again, is being called Trump by the mainstream media. Imagine, first of all, imagine they don't know what they're doing, right? They know they've already created the most hated man in America in Trump, most loved and hated man in America. Now they're trying to equate Elon Musk with the most hated man in America, right? So, and he's already pretty loved. But, you know, what I often am trying to underline is that while the US dollar can have billions of NPCs running around trying to prop up that system, trying to, you know, just drink the canola oil and follow these rules and help propagate the system. None of those NPCs really matter when you compare it to the actual gigabrain people that are joining the resistance to what's going on here and that are actually adding the amount of decentralized forces needed to break this whole thing up. So it's not just Elon Musk, it's not just Vivek, and Vivek on a tear again, right? And you hear all these people trying to say that Vivek is some kind of plant and he's some kind of, because Trump came out and criticized him this weekend. I think that's just normal Trump criticism. I didn't see much more behind it. But Vivek, again, coming out with these tweets where he's, kind of leaving no stone unturned. And he's going into this list where we see just how abused these NPCs really are. And when you see all of these stories about the fake news that these people actually believe all of, right? Imagine believing all of these stories and what kind of person you'd have to be. Russia collusion, the Hunter Biden laptop store, Charlottesville, Bubba Wallace, Juicy Smollett, Covington Catholic kids, Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot, COVID lab leak was a conspiracy theorist, still Steele dossier, Don't Say Gay was in the bill, migrant kids in cages, Georgia election integrity was the new Jim Crow, Duke lacrosse kids, Zelensky and a paragon of democracy, January 6th, peaceful BLM riots, ivermectin is a horse dewormer. Trump used tear gas to clear a crowd for a Bible photo. So he's repeating this tweet every day because I read this the other day and he's just putting it out again and again. He's saying the MSN spits in the face of people every day, every single day with ad nauseum and flagrant lies. And you think the 2024 election is any different? Open your eyes and see the trap they're walking us into right now. And that's what it looks like, right? But again, we've got Bill Ackman now, right? Bill Ackman attacking the DEI stuff. He's saying yesterday that Business Insider is toast, right? He's going to destroy it. At my signal, unleash hell, he says. You've got people like Palmer Luckey, right, making canola oil jokes. Imagine canola oil, one of the main lubricants of the military industrial complex when they took over the centralization of federal powers in World War II. Imagine canola oil becoming a kind of Newtonian principle itself, with Palmer Luckey, one of the people who I think represents the military industrial complex in 2024, openly saying what it is and openly creating tools that will empower individuals, that will actually create a decentralized civilian control over the military, not because of any law, because of the asymmetric power that comes from the tools he's building, right? He's going to empower individuals who have a remote control in order to fight these wars. And that's what you're going to get, right? So while we've got Gonzalo Lira, and all these things happening, right? You've got people fighting against it, right? You've got people like Vivek, and here's the counterforce to that. Here's the fight in all of its ways. It's Palmer Luckey versus the centralized media. It's Elon Musk versus all kinds of things, right? Vivek with the fake news stories. Now, remember, it's the NPCs versus the capable and able people. I just gave you the list of what Vivek is saying is retarded for you to believe if you believe it all in a list, right? Now you get Phil Bump, and Phil Bump he's the best case scenario for the low IQs. He's the best case they have to keep the low IQs in line. Phil Bump, right? Here's what he says: unpacking Vivek's media hoaxes meme, right? So it's a meme now. Here's what he actually says: in the battle over how reality is presented. So Phil Bump admitting it's a battle, right, over how reality is presented, because reality is presented. It's not just there, it's presented, right? This is what he actually said. Remember what I always say, right? If you don't know who these people are, you would get angry at these people. I used to get angry at Phil Bump when I'd read how crazy he was. Now that I know what he actually is, it's just funny. It's just funny to hear the hypocrisy. This is something he wrote. Imagine him writing this. Imagine being near him. What did you write today? What did you write, Phil? All right. Here's what he says. One is that media self-corrects, offering transparency to readers about errors in its reporting, because that's what it does, right? We all know the American media self-corrects. It offers transparency in its corrections, of course, right? An effect of this is that it becomes trivial to sift through the thousands of stories written each month to find mistakes, and then compile such mistakes to suggest that errors are rampant. Has Phil Bump ever admitted that Trump-Russia collusion was a scam? Of course not, right? So he's saying here, oh, you don't look at our corrections because they never make them. They obviously never make them. So the good news is there's enough out there right now happening that is showing us that the able people, the capable people, the ones who can actually make a difference are coincidentally Bitcoiners, and coincidentally all creating things at the same time that are going to push back against any of these, things that are real, that are happening, that are dangerous, but that are already a reality. We don't have civilian control of the US military, and we haven't for a long time. So to sit here and say it's news and it's coming, I get it why Alex Jones did this. I get it, right? I'm not trying to disagree with Alex Jones about the level of caution and worry we have about society. I mean, I think he gets it, right? But at the same time, I'm not so worried about things that are already here. We lost civilian control of the US military when they killed JFK. That's been gone for a while, right? So we've been living in conditions where the military controls the military. We like to believe that presidential elections change that, but they haven't. Now they will, not because of a new president or anything like that. The weapons have changed. The media is changing. Our ability to talk about this stuff is changing. And so we're going to win. We're going to win. We're going to win. All right. That's all I got. But let me see what people are saying let me see what people are saying on Rumble. All right, Rumblers. Let's do this. Indeed, Lance. I need to open a node, and I know too little, Epic Guest says. Where is the beginner's class? Yeah, we're not really node guides here, but some people are. We're hearing node runners dot network is what Morand gave Epic Guests. Awesome. A lot of good stuff on Nosters too. Rokar, I hope this chat understands the Bitcoin and the gold ETF are completely different things. You've been warned. BitcoinTV.com has node stuff. They lied to Trump about troop levels in Syria. They definitely did, Rokar. Yeah, they definitely did. The military does not work for the U.S. citizenry. They work for the BIS. Civil war. Drug war equals hot civil war against poor Americans. Could be. Trillions spent, millions of lives lost. Americans lost the drug war. We will lose the monetary wars too. Americans are public school educated morons. That's true, man. That's true, unfortunately. Start9 is FOSS and has been liked / good function. Function for nodes. The U.S. military is $34 trillion in debt. How are they not fueling up their machines? Yeah. How are they fueling up their machines? For sure, Rokar. White skin recruiting is plummeting in the U.S. military. White people are smart. In this case, not joining. Who would join a military that doesn't want them? Who would fight for, would I fight for Canada? Never. I wouldn't fight a minute for Canada. Nothing. Zero. Even if it was attacked. Quebec, yes, it's different. I'm from Quebec and they never made me a terrorist in Quebec. But Canada, I don't care. I don't care what happens to Canada. I'm not. They openly have said they don't want me. So I don't want them. I don't give a shit. Right? I'm not going to help them. Quebec, I'll help. Americans set up Ukraine and runs the place, Victoria Nuland. That's what it looks like. All narcs are traitors, especially the chubby pig Nuland. Yeah, she's no good. She's no good. Rokar, Israel has civilian military like the USA is supposed to have, while the deep state hates them. Yeah. Reality, federal government employees hate taxpayers. I think that might be cool. True. SCOTUS may be addressing the bureaucratic state. I think so too. Yeah. I have no faith in conservatives, Rokar. I pray you are right and I am wrong. Much love, Morand. No kidding. Yeah. I miss the Quebec Nordiques, Rokar says. They are, but they never quit. Yeah, we all miss the Quebec Nordiques. That was a good time. Good morning, good people. What's your channel name on Rumble? Future Stacks. I usually, have you seen the campaign trail? No, I haven't seen that one. It's 10 below today here in Minnesota. When are you coming over? I'm not coming over, Lightning Vent. I know all about those temperatures. I'm from Quebec. Good morning, people. What's your channel name on Rumble? We just use the Bitcoin Magazine channel for broadcasting on Rumble. Mine does, but not live. It gets fed into Rumble after I do it on YouTube. So you're better off just using the Bitcoin Magazine handle. All right, today that's all I got. Team, well, Bitcoin like to be challenged. Welcome to Tech. Bitcoin is a financial judo masterpiece. It sure is. Democrats are utilizing military-grade psychological social media operations to control political power and destruction of any serious political dissent. It's true. But we're winning. That's the good news. We're winning. All right, team. That's all I got for today. I hope you're having a great day. I hope you have a great day. It's going to be a great one. We're going to have a great time. This week is going to be amazing. Last week was a lot. Last week was a lot of emotions and stuff like that, but it's going to be even better this week. Maybe they're waiting on the Fed interest rates for another hike. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. All right, team. That's all I got. Have a great day.